Please purchase a personal license to remove this message. John lay on his back and closed his eyes and opened them onto a world that was wrong. Not wrong like a crooked picture. Wrong like oil on water wrong. The wilderness was gone and he stood inside a roofless shack. Then he stood in a vast, open plain under a sky the color of a fresh oranges. There were lights where there shouldn't be lights, pulsing, fleshy orbs that drifted through the air like bloated jellyfish, trailing vapors that stank of rotten honey. A jackrabbit loped by on skeletal raven's legs, its head swiveling 180 degrees to fix him with two human eyes before it skittered away. High above, a massive, ribbed shape that might have been a whale or a dirigible moved silently through the purple haze, dripping a black, tarry rain. John frowned, his hand instinctively dropping to his hip. The cold was reassuringly there. Well, he muttered to the alien emptiness, that's different. Then the cold came. 1 second the weather was the dry heat of the Texan plains and the next moment the cold was there. The warmth bled from the world in a single, sucking gasp. The grotesque lights winked out. The bruise-colored sky shattered like dark glass, collapsing inward into a void of absolute black. And the snow began. At first there were only a few hard, biting flakes, then a shrieking, horizontal blast that felt like ground glass against his skin. It wasn't the weather. It was hatred given substance. John saw it then, not snowdrifts, but a tsunami of snow. Mountains of ice, moving with a slow, terrible inevitability, crashing against some unseen shore with a sound like the world breaking its bones. He tried to brace, but the ground beneath him dissolved into a slurry of ice and he was on his back. He tried to get back up but he couldn't move. The cold wasn't just the absence of heat, it was alive and it wanted to destroy him. It climbed his legs, thick and heavy as wet cement, pinning him to the earth. It reached his chest and pressed, squeezing the air from his lungs in thin, pathetic plumes. Then, a new weight descended. Chest crushing. It settled on his sternum like a granite tombstone dropped from nightmare heights. She was small. A hunched, rag-wrapped thing, barely the size of a small child. Yet she weighed more than glaciers. Her clothes were stiff with millennia of frost, her skin the bluish-gray of a week-old corpse. Her spine was a grotesque, twisted ridge under the rags. Hair, white and matted with filth, hung around a face that was less a face and more a frozen snarl, lips peeled back from blackened gums, nose a collapsed ruin. And her eyes were pits of pale blue light that burned with a cold that made the surrounding storm feel warm. She smiled. A crack-splitting old leather. And leaned down. Her mouth hovered an inch from his. She didn't bite. She sipped. John felt it, a hideous, intimate pulling deep within his soul. Not his breath, but the vitality behind it. The very heat of his life was drawn up his throat, through his clenched teeth, and into her waiting maw. He saw it leave him, a shimmering, silver-gold vapor, and she drank it down like a connoisseur savoring a rare brandy. Get off me, you icy bitch! John roared, panic igniting white-hot. He tried to reach for his gun. His arm lay leaden at his side, buried. He tried to scream. His jaw was locked shut by the cold. He tried to buck her off. He could have moved the Alps with greater ease. Her breath washed over him, smelling of empty crypts and dry, ancient blood. Strong one, John Wayne, she croaked, ice over abyss voice. I know your name. Know why you trespass these lands. Matters not. My hunting grounds now. So, hungry. John forced his frozen jaw to grate open a millimeter. Lady, you picked the wrong cowboy. I've killed worse than frostbite fairy tales. She laughed, a dry, rasping rattle that shook more of the precious silver vapor from him. Oh, I think not cowboy, for I am Mara. I come from the lands where fire freezes and ice burns. I am new to this land. But see? She gestured with a clawed hand at the howling, infinite winter. Made it mine. A bays-like pup. Her claws long, black, and glistening like obsidian pressed against his sternum. They did not pierce the skin. They sank, passing through flesh and bone as if through smoke. The pain was not cutting, but disassembling. He felt something deep inside him, a core of will and presence, being carefully, expertly unthreaded. "I know your quest, cowboy," she whispered, her lightless eyes boring into his. "Personally, I do not care, but I have been paid me to keep the preacher safe. And I," she grinned, "always honor my deals." John's vision tunneled. The world was fading to a pinprick of agonizing cold in those two blue star eyes. He felt himself becoming thin, transparent, a ghost before his body had even died. "I will drink you dry, cowboy," Mara said pleasantly, conversationally. "If you wake you will be an empty shell. A husk fit only to fill the coyotes' bellies." No. The thought was not a word. It was refusal written in the bedrock of his soul. He was John Wayne. He would not die in a dream. His right hand twitched. The Colt appeared in his frozen grip, not drawn, but manifested by pure, furious will. He fired. The explosions were monstrous in the silent, snow-muffled world. Blam! Blam! Blam 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 blam! Muzzle flashes strobed, lighting up the swirling chaos. 6 shots. Center mass. Face. Skull. Mara's body jerked with each impact. Ragged holes appeared in her frost-stiff clothes, in her iron-colored flesh. Enclosed. Like water smoothing over a stone. Like it had never been. Not a scar. Not a mark. She leaned closer, her grin now wide enough to swallow the storm. "This is my realm, little man. Here, you are only a dreamer. And I," she tapped a claw on his forehead, "makes the rules." Darkness surged, final and absolute. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with a gunfight under a desert sun, but stolen in the night by a fairytale monster. Then, a new sound. A crisp, clean crunch of a boot on virgin snow. Someone stepped into the edge of the storm. "John," a voice called, laced with mocking amusement. "What kind of trap have you gotten yourself stuck in now?" John wrenched his head to the side, a monumental effort. Jack stood there. But it was not the Jack he knew. This Jack stood draped in brilliant, flowing silks of crimson and ivory. Intricate, lacquered armor, painted with coiling dragons and fierce, stylized demons, covered his chest and shoulders. His face was powdered bone white, his eyebrows shaved and redrawn as sharp, cruel arches. His eyes, lined in kohl, held a cold, ancient intelligence. In his hands, held with casual expertise, was a Jian sword, its slender, double-edged blade alive with shimmering, heat haze characters that burned with a soft gold light. The blizzard did not touch him. Snowflakes veered away an inch from his body, repelled by an invisible heat. "Jack," John rasped, the word barely a scrape. "Kill the hag, get her off." Jack tilted his head, a connoisseur examining a problematic vintage. "I can," he said, his voice different, cultured, layered, devoid of its former wheedling fear. "But not for free, Mr. Wayne. Our previous deal didn't cover Dream Demon." Mara snarled, a sound that cracked the ice for yards around. "You do not belong here, exiled one. This is not your theater." "Quiet, hag," Jack said, and his voice changed. For a single syllable, it was not a voice at all, but the sound of a great gong struck in a deep palace, a wave of palpable force that hit Mara and made her flinch back, her weight lightening for a glorious second. "Your petty winter bores me." He looked back at John, "All business. You will free me from these ropes when you wake. You help me get the girl from the preacher's compound. You see this through to the end, and you will no more questions about who I am. Do we have an accord?" John didn't have breath for hesitation. He had one card left, and it was this silk-clad enigma. He gave a single, stiff nod. "Done. Good." Jack's painted face resolved into a mask of terrible focus. "Then close your eyes, gunslinger. This will be inelegant." He raised the sword. The characters along the blade flared from gold to white-hot. Mara shrieked, a sound of pure, primal rage that shook the foundations of the dream. She was fear, but she was also pride. She would not flee. She flung her hands out, and the very storm obeyed. A mountain of ice, sharp as spears, sheared from the wave behind her and hurled itself at Jack. Jack did not dodge. He took a single, flowing step forward, a step that seemed to cover impossible distance, and passed through the avalanche. The ice and snow didn't shatter against him, they parted for him, melting into nothing before they could touch his silks. He was a hot knife in frozen butter. He was before her in an instant. His free hand shot out, not to strike, but to grasp. It closed around her throat. Where his fingers touched, Mara's iron flesh sizzled and steamed. She thrashed, her blue light eyes wide with a shock deeper than pain, the shock of a primal thing meeting something older, and far more disciplined. No loose ends for your employer, Frost crone. Jack's voice was a gentle, deadly whisper. The tale stays mine to weave. The sword came down. It did not cleave. It unmade. There was no spray of blood, no crunch of bone. There was a sound like a sigh, like a canvas tearing across a vast, dark expanse. The blue light in Mara's eyes winked out. Her form, the rags, the iron skin, the twisted spine unraveled into threads of shadow and wisps of screaming frost, which were then sucked violently into the glowing characters on Jack's blade. The storm shattered like glass. Waking John woke with a sound that was half gasp, half retch, vaulting from the abyss back into his body. He was on the hard dirt floor of the outdoors, drenched in a cold sweat that soaked his shirt and plastered his hair to his scalp. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. The deep, cellular cold from the dream clung to him, making his joints ache. And Jack stood over him. Not in silks and armor. In his travel-stained clothes. He was breathing hard, as if he'd just run a great distance, and his eyes were wide with a stark, genuine alarm. His hands were empty. No. Not empty. In his right hand, held loosely at his side, was the hilt of the Jian sword. Its blade was clean, gleaming dully in the camp light. The mystical characters were gone. It was just a beautiful, deadly piece of steel. At his feet, already beginning to melt into a foul, dark slurry that smelled of grave soil and ozone, was a severed head. Small, hunched, hair white and matted, skin like old iron. Its eyes were now just shriveled, black raisins in sunken sockets. A rime of unnatural frost crackled and hissed as it evaporated from the neck stump and the surrounding dirt. John sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. A deep, bruised ache throbbed in the center of his chest, right where Mara's claws had sunk. Jack swallowed, his throat clicking. He looked from the melting head to John, his expression unreadable. "You were lucky," he said, his voice quiet, stripped of all its former pretense. This was his real voice. "She was already feeding. A little while longer, and even I couldn't have saved you." John stared at the head, then at the sword, then finally up at Jack, this man who was not a consulate liaison, but a warrior who traveled in silks and killed nightmares in the land of sleep. The pieces clicked into a new, more dangerous configuration. The rope around Jack's wrists and ankles was gone. Not cut. The coils lay on the floor beside him, each knot still perfectly tied, but simply off, as if the man inside had simply ceased to be bound. John got to his feet, the movement slow and deliberate. He felt the weight of his Colt on his hip. It was a comfort, but a small one. He looked at Jack, and for the first time since the desert, since the devil, since the buried silver and the small bones, John Wayne understood a simple, terrifying truth: he was not the only hunter in this game. And someone else, someone with a painted face and a sword that drank ghosts, was writing parts of the play. He hated it.